Marvel's brand new television show on Disney Plus has been a pretty big success. Its extremely unique decision to set the show in some kind of weird hybrid of a mystery, thriller, creepy, Lost-esque setup inside an ever-evolving classic set of television sitcom eras is a bold choice. And what remains to be seen about the show is whether this will actually have significant implications for the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or whether it's going to be some fun side tie-in. If Disney and Marvel choose to, this show could have massive implications for the rest of the cinematic universe. So if you aren't aware, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies take a lot of inspiration from the comics that they are derived from, but they don't generally adapt everything one for one. In order to keep fans who've read the comics guessing, but also give them little teases, they allude to a lot of things that happen in the comics, but they do a lot of subverting of expectations. It's an awesome way to satisfy both fans of the extended canon, as well as bring awesome new concepts that have never been seen before by people who don't read the comics. It's actually a brilliant way to both incorporate old canon without telling the same stories over and over again, and it seems like maybe that should have been the method that they used for adapting certain other series. Maybe. Anyway, based on what seems to have inspired this Wandavision television show, as I said before, there could be massive, crazy changes coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I want to break down some of those as well as give a couple theories of my own. So a lot of people know this at this point, but I'll give a little bit of a recap. Marvel, when they started making the Marvel Cinematic Universe, did not have the movie rights to make movies with the X-Men in them, the mutants. But a huge part of the Marvel world in comics, as well as like some of the biggest Marvel stars, are tied to X-Men. At this point, with the licensing in the right place, it is possible for mutants to come to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So a lot of the speculations, including my own, have to do with the ways that the current Marvel Cinematic Universe might eventually get to a point where there could be mutants involved. Just in case you don't know who those mutants could be, we're talking the X-Men. So, you know, your Magnetos, Professor Xavier, Wolverine, these are characters that would be traditionally considered mutants. A fun fact is that Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, was originally a mutant. In fact, she is one of the main mutants, Magneto's daughter in the original comic book series. And honestly, when I saw Avengers 2, I was a little bit confused about the weird hoops they had to jump through to include an X-Men in a non-X-Men property. And unless I'm wrong, I think it came down to the fact that she was originally in a non-X-Men comic first, even though she's Magneto's daughter. Nevertheless, throughout Marvel comic book history, she's had a lot of significant impacts on the mutant world, as well as herself being a mutant. And one of the reasons for this is that Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, is one of the most powerful and unstable heroes, quote-unquote, heroes, villains, characters in the Marvel Universe. Her powers are really unknown and at points in the story completely uncontrollable. The fact that her powers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe come from the Infinity Stones support the point that if Marvel really wanted to, they could let her power be insane again in this context. Right now, from the information that I found on the internet, as well as sources of people that I know personally, thanks Pete from Ponderings of Pete, I'll link his channel down below, the two primary sources of speculation from the comic book series that have to do with where WandaVision could be going are the comic book series House of M, as well as another run called Avengers Disassembled. And I think one of the reasons that these two storylines are brought up is because they are perfect examples of extreme Wanda power, uncontrolled, having huge changes. See, the problem for Scarlet Witch is that basically her power allows her to alter reality, and unfortunately she oftentimes has a hard time controlling whether her subconscious remains her subconscious or whether it just starts changing things in real life. Because of that, Avengers Disassembled is a storyline where she accidentally causes a bunch of problems to happen that eventually end with the Avengers breaking up officially. Due to her subconscious going completely out of control, lots of the Avengers end up dying. And the Avengers that are left experience serious physical consequences that erupt in a whole thing with the UN disavowing everything to do with the Avengers. And that all ends with the Avengers and the X-Men trying to figure out what to do with Scarlet Witch because she's too powerful. Well, House of M is another storyline in that vein. In House of M, everybody decides that Scarlet Witch is too powerful and they're trying to decide whether or not they have to kill her to save the world before she does worse damage. When pushed to her limit, Scarlet Witch accidentally, but sort of on purpose, recreates the entire world, giving everyone the job and the life that they'd always always dreamed of. And the entirety of reality as we know it completely shifts to a parallel dimension, another world, I don't know. But it's worth noting that the next Doctor Strange movie is called Multiverse of Madness and could easily tie into this, especially because I think that's the next movie that's supposed to be released, assuming that the Black Widow one didn't get delayed. Also, noting about the House of M storyline is that Wanda ended up having children which were sort of fake creations of her mind, and part of her madness initially came from like losing those children when they were sort of like disappeared when it was brought forth that they weren't real to begin with, they were creations of her mind. And I bring that up because of the pregnancy in episode 2. Anyway, with all of those things in place in the comics, there's a lot of different directions that Marvel could go with the storyline. Based on the pullout from episode 1 of WandaVision, it doesn't seem like she has changed all of actual reality yet, but she seems to be existing in some kind of sort of weird altered version of reality, which she could have created herself or she could be trapped in. Additionally, that logo that we saw in episode 2 likely has something to do with the organization SWORD, which is an organization sort of like S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's made to protect and preserve super weapons, I'm pretty sure. And if what Wanda is capable of in the comics is something that is eventually going to translate into the television show, or if that is even remotely possible, she could be one of the strongest weapons of all time. I mean, slight spoilers for the House of M storyline, she is convinced and coerced by an external force to do what she does. So we could be seeing Wanda in a simulation where they're testing out how powerful her powers are. Wanda could be trapped and someone else could be testing out her powers. It's possible, though I don't love this theory, that she could just be doing it to herself to deal with her own grief. That is something that we see her doing in the comics, but it doesn't do the sitcom thing. She starts changing things that actually make sense for her storyline. But all of these are crazy interesting things to consider, I think. So one of the major plot threads in House of M is that when she recreates this entire fake world and it involves everybody in it, mutants have become accepted as normal and they're all living normal lives, because a huge part of the regular X-Men storyline is how mutants are oppressed and people don't like them, and Magneto is trying to usher forward humans' next evolution, while the good guys like Charles Xavier are trying to have mutants and humans live at peace. But it generally doesn't go well and mutants are hated, and there's this whole storyline where they try to like basically put them in concentration camps. Well, at the end of House of M, Wanda gets frustrated when confronted with the fact that she created this entire fake reality, and she accidentally changes reality again by saying no more mutants, which basically gets rid of the mutant gene in everyone and deletes a bunch of the X-Men's powers, as well as like just random mutants all over the world, which of course results in another massive civil war. Like everything she says just like changes reality. It kind of sucks for her and everyone else, I guess. Anyway, if we are going to ramp up to Wanda having world level changing powers on accident, and we also want to see Marvel play with the expectations of those people that have already followed the comics, I think this would be a great opportunity to flip everything on its head and potentially have Wanda somehow create the mutant species, the mutant race, to create the X gene and actually start bringing the X-Men into this world. It would change a lot of the way that the X-Men originally existed, because in the world of the Marvel comics, the mutant gene has been around for a very long time before we get to like the X-Men stories in the 60s. But for me, I just think it would be completely awesome to see them flip this on its head, and instead of having Wanda just do completely bad things without trying, actually do something really cool that could usher in another awesome wave of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Other speculations that I've seen online that I didn't come up with myself is that the entire House of M storyline could take place in this fourth phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, being that Wanda creates this fake universe and that's what the entire next wave is going to be about. Either way, both of these possibilities are exciting, and they are much more exciting than what I initially thought the WandaVision television show was leading towards. But that's enough babbling from me. Where do you think this television show could be heading, or are you just along for the ride regardless? Please comment down below any thoughts that you may have, and if you like this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. And hey, if you want to help a friend out and you saw this video and you have other friends that like this television show, you can share it with them. If you'd like to see more videos about me postulating about the Marvel Cinematic Universe or WandaVision, or you'd like to stick around for some of my normal topics of conversation, which is books, please, it would help me very much if you hit that subscribe button. I'm looking forward to finding out where WandaVision is going. I'm hyped for the episode this Friday, and also I think it would be hilarious if all of our predictions are completely wrong too. I genuinely hope to see you again soon. Until next time, bye.
Sleep, no one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. If it don't show up, I might get fired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired.